Hey guys, Kid here of Burn 1 with another deck profile. Today we'll be looking at Konosuba, which is one of my most favorite series, as well as currently one of my most favorite competitive decks to play. Before we get into the deck profile itself, I want to make a note for those that only play English that there are currently 2 promo cards in this deck that are not available in English. Hopefully those cards make the leap over to the English format, but either way, I'll be releasing another Konosuba deck profile pretty soon after I'm done testing specifically for the English format and with all the English only cards that are currently available. Besides that, let's just get into the deck profile itself. So we're going to start off with level 0 as always. So the first card we play, which might also be the worst card in the deck maybe, not 100% sure, but we do need beaters at level 0. So our level 0 game, we do play 4 Swimsuit Megumins. It has a demerit where you can't play events or backups, but this deck basically plays no backups except for the 2-3 event, which we'll get into later. But besides that, so the demerit's almost non-existent until late game. The secondary effect is the part that makes this card semi-good. Also, the card is pretty mediocre in general. It's a 3-5 beater with the effect that whenever it gets reversed once per turn, you may do the effect, which is mill the top card of your deck. And if that card is level 2 or higher, you can rest this card. So one annoying part about this card is that when it gets reversed, you have to mill the top card of your deck. It's not an option to mill it. The only option part of it is that you get to rest the card itself. So sometimes you can get in some weird situations where you kind of don't want to mill, but you're forced to anyway because this is one of your only playables in hand during that turn. Besides that though, the random plus that you get sometimes early on is pretty powerful, and as well as, of course, being able to mill a card occasionally does get you quicker to the second deck, which is a little bit more consistent, though this deck has a lot of really great deck manipulation main phase, so I'll get into that as well. If you have the option to, there is a promo card that exists currently in Japanese, which I do not have yet. I do have 4 foil ones ordered, and hopefully those get in. But there is a clean cut Kirito that is 2,500 power, and it has, I believe, adventure trait and magic trait, I want to say. I forgot the exact traits. Trait's kind of important in this deck because you want most of your cards to have magic trait or adventure trait, or at least a really high number of magic trait in your deck for a couple cards later on. But that card is also a really, really good replacement card for this card, since it does let you be a little bit more aggressive early on. Only downside is that 2,500 power is not always enough to trade or beat like other beaters, even against vanillas. It's kind of tough sometimes because the deck itself doesn't run any back row supports, and you'll see why. Next, we have 4 runners. So this card is one of the other weaker cards too, but the reason we run it is because it does let us be a little bit more aggressive in the beginning of the game, which also helps us build extra stock, which is really important for this version of the deck. And then the secondary effect, which is pretty powerful, and it's the whole reason you want to run this runner anyway, is because when on play you can ditch a Climax's Salvage, a magic trait, or an adventure trait character and put it into your hand. So the free run part is amazing, but at the end of the day, we're looking more at the climax ditching from hand, because there are some moments where you'll just be flooded with climaxes, and like 1 or 2 of these cards in your hand just makes everything very, very great, especially towards the end of the game when you're playing your level 3 Megumin combos. It's really easy to grab extra climaxes and then salvage things from the waiting room to set up your hand properly. So yeah, we run 4 of this just because we are looking to open up with this or the 3-5 beater early on, and it helps us be a little bit more aggressive with a little extra attacks for turn 2. This deck, you kind of want to be able to tri-field and do 3 attacks the following turn, unless you're trying to play a little bit slower to make the level 0 game long. Either way, I think it works fine. Just depends on the tempo of the game and if your opponent's canceling at 0 or not. Next, we have one of our other deck milling cards. It's pretty powerful in this deck because most of our cards do have magic trait character, or are magic trait characters. So the effect is when this card goes from field to waiting room, you can discard a card and look up to top 4, add a magic trait character to your hand, and then discard the rest. This is used early on, usually to find our level 0 back row, which is the most important piece in this deck, or at least you really want to set that up as early as possible, because it helps us abuse a lot of the facts that we're going to be aggressive early, and also our level 1 combo builds a lot of extra stock. I currently run 3 in the list. You could cut this down to 2 and add a drop searcher, which is probably more recommended after playing this list for so long. I feel like the TD drop searcher Megumin is pretty important in this list, because if you don't do that, then you're just kind of praying the whole time that you draw into your level 0 Union back row. Games where you don't have that back row starting from level 1 and on can be challenging to win, but it's still winnable just because the top end is pretty silly sometimes. It just makes the game a little bit harder, and sometimes could cause your tempo in the game to, like, I guess, speed up a bit, because now you're taking a lot extra damage that you normally would be able to mill your entire deck to force a refresh for. But yeah, still, this card's very powerful. I could see it at 3, see it at 2, but you definitely want to run this card. Next, we're going to run my favorite girl, Aqua, here. So, normally, this card, personally, you probably only want 2 of in the deck, but because I'm a little bit more greedy than most JP players, I currently run 3 because both effects are amazing. So this is another hand fix outlet for us. It's when this card comes into play, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's an adventure trait character or a goddess trait character or axis cult trait character, you can add it to your hand, then discard a card. So we got hand fix there, but the secondary effect is a very powerful effect. So when this card comes into play, you can pay to force yourself to refresh. So this deck can abuse this effect a lot because you do build a lot of extra stock, as well as whenever you refresh and then you like triple cancel and draw into a climax and then like take another climax out. There are times where your deck is still like 35 plus cards and you're out like 4 to 5 climaxes already, and you don't really have the necessary setup to be able to mill that entire deck to avoid some potential damage. So what's really nice about this is you can force the refresh. One of my favorite things to do is, like, I double trigger like the Stock Soul or Gate, and then the following turn I'll just play this to pay it out, as well as get a nice compression going there with, like, if I just shove 5 climaxes back in that way. This past weekend, this did help me win one of my games where I was out 6 climaxes right after refresh, and before my opponent got a turn to basically punish me for having an unlucky shuffle, I was able to force a refresh, which made my ratio really good again, making it be something like 1 in 4, 1 in 3. I forgot the exact number, but this effect is very powerful, as well as this is your blue fix, so I figured putting it at 3, you're going to level up one of them at 1 point, and the other 2 will just be available for you when you're searching for it. Very powerful card, but it does come at a cost just because it does not have a magic trait character. So your level 2 game can be a little awkward sometimes if you don't have a really good level 2 setup. Finally, the most important piece in our level 0 game is this level 0 Union. First effect, which is pay 1, clock yourself from the top of the deck, and then search your deck specifically for the level 3 Megumin from set 1 that's just named Megumin. Then the second effect, it acts as your brainstorm, but it's always a +1 after every brainstorm, basically. So you pay 1, restless, and reveal the level 3 Megumin from set 1 in your hand to look at, add up to top 4, add 1 magic trait character or adventure trait character to your hand, and then discard the rest. So like I said, being able to tri-field early on without really losing hand is really powerful in this deck, because every time you get 1 stock, that is a potential +1 card to your hand because of this effect. And this is the reason why you usually want 2 of these in the back row as soon as possible, because every turn it just like pay 2 +2 is so powerful. You can stop clocking really early on. It helps you find pieces to set up your board state and everything like that. And even if your hand looks really bad, as long as you have 2 stock, you usually can find 2 beaters from it and then just slam them on the board and swing for stock again. This card is the whole reason I think this deck can even function the way it does, because of the level 1 game is really, I want to say, RNG based, I guess, but because this card exists, it makes all your pluses feel even stronger. It makes your level 1 game feel like you +2 every time you get it off, basically. Yeah, so biggest strategy is to find this as early on in the game and slam these in the back row and just start going off. A lot of deck manipulation, like I said, being able to mill like 4 to 8 cards a turn, along with some other deck manipulation, is just really powerful. I love this card. Now we're going to be moving on to our level 1 game. The strongest level 1 game for the deck is the level 1 Union combo. It combos with Gate, and Gate, of course, is a very powerful trigger to begin with. But what makes this card so good is that as long as your field is all magic trait characters, this card gains 2,000 power. So almost your entire deck has magic trait. So the only time you really have to worry is if you have an Aqua card on the field. Aqua is like one of the few cards that doesn't have magic trait. And so sometimes you lose the 2k power, which can be a little bit annoying, but usually by the time that happens, it's not as important. You're just looking to get extra damage in because you're waiting to combo off at level 3. So what makes this combo so great for the deck is that every time you reverse your battle opponent with the Gate Climax out, you get to blind stock 1 from the top of your deck, and then you reveal the next card on top of your deck, and if that card is level 1 or higher, it goes to your hand. Even if it's an event card, it still goes to your hand, which is another reason we can get away with playing like only 2 of the 2-3 events, because that event is very, very powerful, and because this Union usually goes off a couple times a game, you have a really high chance of hitting this card into your hand at some point, either through normal drawing or through the Climax combo. So like I said, the level 0 Union supplements this card amazingly, because every time you blind stock, that's basically a +1 to your hand and a mill 4 pretty much, as well as the second part where you reveal a top card. If it's level 1 or higher, this card almost feels like a +2 every game. And the games where you don't have to like spend as much stock on the level 0 Union just become insane. You're allowed to do a lot of crazy stuff at the end game, because I mean, if you have like 14 stock at level 3, you can like almost, I don't want to say guarantee kills, but you get really, really high chances to kill your opponent from 3-0 easy. But yeah, so this has been one of my most favorite combo effects that has been printed recently. I think this is the first time they ever printed this effect, because all the ones afterwards feel a little bit weaker than this one. But the GGO one that came out with the gold bar seems pretty powerful. I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, but like I said, I think this combo is really, really powerful. Next, I play 4 of this level 1 Megumin that also climax combos. This is something you don't really see that often but you don't just see often, period, is that we have a double climax combo at level 1. And what makes this card so powerful is that, 1, it combos with our in-game combo, which is the Stock Soul. Next, on play, it's a 6k beater, so even if you don't have the combo, it's still powerful enough to fight things at level 1. And then secondly, the combo itself is really powerful since it combos with Stock Soul. That's +1 stock to, and then when this card reverses my battle opponent, I can blind stock 1 and then salvage the 3/2 Megumin from the waiting room to my hand. So the reason this card is so powerful is that to get 2 extra stock a turn at level 1, you usually need 2 Unions out at least to combo off. But in situations where you have to combo with this card, you still get the 2 stock, because you get a Stock Soul, which is a +1, and then a blind stock from this one, and then you get a plus to hand, which is the 3/2 Megumin. So this card's really easy to set up like your hand to have 2 or 3 level 3 Megumins in your hand, so you're ready to go off after level 1 and when you hit level 3. And like I said, blind stock in this deck is a little bit risky, because you know you're playing the RNG game there. But the fact that you get basically 2 stock for 1 card, 1 climax combo is really powerful, since, like I said, the level 0 Union is the most powerful card, I think, in this deck to make the deck so consistent. Just being able to top check 4 for 1 and +1 is really powerful. But yeah, so this is the secondary option to run. I think most lists run only like 2, maybe 3. I went ahead and gone for the full 4 because I like the option of just drawing into either my level 1 combos and then seeing which climax I do end up drawing into my hand, and then decide from there which combo I will go for. Usually you're looking to get the Union off more often than not, because I feel the random plus is a little bit more powerful than the guaranteed plus from the 1-0, because the guaranteed plus 3/2 Megumin is not going to be impactful early on. And usually, if you only have like one Mega Man in hand, that's more than enough to be able to find all three if you want to do a triple level 3 Mega Man combo. Either way, though, this card is still very, very powerful. It's one of the reasons it makes this deck so consistent. Just able to build so much stock off of your level 1 combos and set up your level 3 game through this. And like I said, this is one of the PR cards that is currently unavailable in English. I really hope this comes out in English because it is a very powerful card. Finally, we run 2-1-0 level 1 bombs, or Suiciders, whichever you prefer to call it, and that have Hand Encore as well. The reason we run this card is because there are some games where your opponent does try to play around your level 1 combo because you do need a reverse. This lets you put these level 1 bombs out into empty slots where there's no battle opponent, get some extra damage in without wasting your level 1 combo cards, and then hand encoring if need be, or even, you know, they try to run a level 1 into this and you just deny the reverse from it, and then that gives you a target next turn. The hand encore part does come important occasionally, but like I said, this is like the very last in-game type of stuff you're looking at here after you've already exhausted your combos, usually when you're looking to play this, or if your opponent's playing really hard around reverses. Outside of that, it doesn't get a lot of play. It's probably one of the weaker cards in the deck, but I don't think it's as weak as the level 0 3-5 beater Mega Man, which personally I think is one of the weaker cards in the deck. Alright, we're moving on to level 2. There's not much going on at level 2 because our level 3 game comes in at level 2 as well. So the first card we have here is the 2-1 Aqua and Mega Man counter. So this is just a Leafa counter. When you use it, reveal the top card of your deck, add it to hand if it's adventure trait character or magic trait character, and then discard a card from your hand. So we do have a couple whiffs in this deck with this card, which is a little unfortunate. If need be, depending on how the meta is, you can just swap this out for a level 2 Mega Man counter that sends stuff to memory, depending on what the top end is going on right now. But usually you never use this card. Personally, the reason I picked it is because, one, Leafa counter is sometimes just enough to live another turn, but also, like I said earlier, Aqua is best girl, so of course this counter is very strong and has Aqua on it. I'm just going to play it no matter what. And, you know, it has Adventurer trait and Magic trait on it, which means it's easier to get it off certain card effects. Next, one of the most powerful cards in the set, I would say, and even the deck, is this 2-3 event counter. What makes this card special compared to other cards is that the effect is your opponent counts the number of stock he has and then puts it all into waiting room, and then at the end of the next turn, or whenever the next end phase is, that is when he puts all the stock back. So you combo this card with the set 1 Aqua, that's just named Aqua, and you decompress your opponent really, really bad. This card punishes players for being very stock aggressive, I guess I would describe it, but people who are compressing really hard through the convention of getting like 14, 15 plus stock that is clean, this just kills them. So you can do things like dodge combos. So if your opponent has level 3 reverse combos with this, that need like more than one stock to go off, you just counter, and then they have no stock to be able to pay for the effect. And then also you can main phase this, force the refresh with the Aqua level 3, and then they're really decompressed, and it's like really sad for your opponent. Most of the times where I play this effect and force the refresh and then like triple Mega Man, my opponent never lives. I haven't seen a game yet, but this card is very powerful. Some matchups it's completely useless. You just got to figure that out, which matchups where your opponent are actually looking to build a lot of stock to kind of, you know, unload right at the end or something with all that stock. Sometimes, you know, your opponent's not going to do crap with it, so you just like level it up for blue, and then you just kind of have the other one chilling around, and easy discard fodder to other stuff. But very powerful card when you are able to let it go off. Now we're moving into our level 3 game. We run 3 of this early play Aqua. It's really, really powerful for the deck. So This card, during your turn, if all your characters are basically just characters, it gains 2k, so it's 11k on attack. And then on play, you can discard a card from your hand to heal the stock from your clock, which is really powerful because our end game is looking for a lot of ways to maximize our stock usage. So we usually are trying to get like around 12 stock to play with at the end of the game, which is usually, I think, around 12 stock is what you kind of want or so, or 14 I think it was, around there. You just want a lot of stock to go off late game so you don't have any problems and you can just kind of abuse the end game that you have in this deck. So being able to heal the stock by discarding one feels good, since it makes this card 3/1 usually. What's also good about it is that because you get all these free stocks from everything else as well, I mean, the level 0 union does build hand very easily, so it almost feels like on play, look at top 4, add a magic trait character to your magic or adventure trait character to your hand, and then discard the rest. So it's kind of like a double-edged hand filter type of thing, I guess. And it's one of the few ways too we discard a lot of our climaxes and useless like 2-3 events from our hand to build or to heal and stock up away and everything like that. The effect for it to come out early at level 2 is that you get to have 4 more other traded characters. So very easy to do, because if you have 2 unions in the back row, you're set all game. One thing to note though, because you do get a lot of blind stocks in this deck, you do want to hold on to these in your hand whenever you do draw them. I currently only run 3. Personally, this might have to be bumped up to 4 because of sometimes you just get RNG screwed with your blind stocks and not realizing that you blind stock 2 aqua level 3s early on in the game, which does happen sometimes, but it hurts, but it doesn't hurt as bad as you think. But yeah, very powerful level 2 card. This is our only way to kill things at level 2 that are more than 7,000 power. So it kind of sucks sometimes if our opponent has a really big wall at level 2, but the way the deck works, we also don't care sorta, because we're just looking to keep them in range of getting them to like level 3 so we can just pop off at the end and kill our opponent in 1 turn without even interacting with them, which is the best part. But yeah, also to note, this is the only healer in the deck because to me this deck is what I would say the closest thing to a combo deck in Weiss, where we want to do multiple things right at the end to combo off and kill our opponent instead of just throwing a climax combo and then praying damage will go through. Finally, we're here at the top end that actually matters the most here. So we play 4, obviously, of set 1 Megumin because we do play the stock soul because it climax combos with the level 1 combo we have, as well as this card becomes super deadly. If your opponent leaves 3 characters on the board for you to hit with this card, you have a really high chance of winning. I don't mean, it must be astronomically low or something crazy like that. So for those that don't know the effect, it's on play, look at the top 3, add 1 card to hand, and discard the rest. What's important about that effect is it does a lot of things which people don't, I think people don't really realize that often, because I know a while ago people were looking at the level 3 Wiz top end, which I think is very powerful in itself, but I don't think it's anywhere as consistent as this Megumin. So this helps you find your climaxes for your climax combo at level 3. It also helps you find the 2-3 event if you don't have one in hand already. It also grabs like any of your top end scary stuff. It also can cantrip into another level 3 Megumin, which cantrips into another one, which cantrips into the climax itself. It's a very spooky card. So level 3s that can cantrip into important pieces I think are really powerful. I feel like sometimes some people do underestimate like the consistency they get out of a really good end game that lets you cantrip into any card you want, especially when you're running like this 2-3 aqua event. This also lets you know, like I said, find other pieces to set up that perfect end game state to kill your opponent. This is why having a lot of stock right at the end of the game is really powerful, since you can spin it to find things to combo off correctly. Second part of this, for those that don't know, is that the climax combo with stock soul, at the start of your attack phase, you can pay 1 and rest the card. If you do, you deal 4 damage to your opponent, and then the card in front of this, you pick it and send it to clock. So the only way to really play around this card is either 1, do not have a field, Or 2, have a card that has this card that cannot be targeted by your opponent, because cards that I can't target can't be clock kicked, which makes this combo a little less good. It just becomes a boring vanilla burn 4. But what's really nice about that too is it does let you play around anti-damage counters and things like that, because we never actually go into a fight with our opponent. They can't use backups, they can't use counter events and stuff like that, can't use anti-damage counter against this card. It makes it really awkward for your opponent to play around this. And if your opponent ends up running their board in, you don't really care either, because you're just really looking to swing kind of big at the end game, because if you combo off correctly, you end up decompressing your opponent like crazy. Probably one of the most powerful end games currently, in combination with these other cards, in my opinion, because if you're at 3-0 and you have 3 characters that can clock kick on the board, if any damage goes through, you just kind of lose. And then if you're ahead, if you're ahead all game too, there are games where I'm like at 2-3 and my opponent's already at level 3 and they clock themselves a couple times or whatever, and they're like at 3-4 because of refresh, and then I get hit to level 3. I just show them 3 Megamins and the stock soul, and then they just scoop because there's nothing they can do about it. They just eat 3 clock kicks anyway. Also, to get back a little bit more into leaving something for your opponent's field, I forgot to mention this a little bit earlier, but a lot of your level 1 game loses power in certain conditions, like I've said, and so like your opponent has to run level 0s into it, or usually they're able to kill the card and leaving something on board for you to reverse, or not reverse in this case, but clock kick, which is really powerful. It's one of my favorite end game right now, because it's just so your opponent just can't do anything about it like 90% of the time, I feel like. Next, we play this One of Megumin. This comes from set 2. Its effect is that when it comes into play, you can pick a card of your level or lore and put it into play from your hand. So there are some occasions where your opponent has a lane or something where they're untargetable, so you can't clock kick them. So you have to find like other ways to get really good value for your combo turn of killing them. This is one of the cards because it does provide on attack burn 5 for no climax combo. So as long as you have 3 stock and you can discard 2, you deal 5 to your opponent, which is really, really powerful. In some cases, I've used this to end games very easily. People who, even when I'm behind, if I get a good turn to decompress them, and then I'm able to slam this on the board, I'm able to burn 5. It usually sticks because of how decompressed my opponent is. Second thing is, since you get to play a level 3 for free basically from playing this card, you can do situations where like you play the set 1 Aqua, and because you played it from hand, you just pay 1 to force a refresh on them with 2 less climaxes, and it helps you conserve stock. So those games where you can't really combo off, you've missed combos and there's nothing you can do about it, or you get hit like 7 damage straight from 1-0 to level 2 instantly, is really, really awkward, because you don't get that extra turn or 2 to build a good amount of stock to be able to combo off. This saves you in those situations. You just kind of gotta have to read the situation yourself and figure out whether you want to hold on to this or not. In some cases, you can cantrip into it, like I said, with the level 3 Megamin. This card's a lot more powerful than I originally gave it credit for. If you do not like my other part of the level 3 game, I'd consider playing 2 more of these into the deck, because it's on trade and it just has a very powerful effect. And there's cases where you can, like, if you run 3 of this card, you can play 1, then play another one, and then play another one, and then play the level 3 Aqua, and so your entire in-game costs 3 stock, which seems really spooky at times too when your opponent like tries to play around level the set 1 Megamin and stuff like that, or if you have like no stock really to mess around. Yeah, I think it's just the effect is just very powerful for this deck. And then the first effect, it gains 500 for every other character on the board on your side of the field, which is good. Oh, also, whenever you play a character for free, the card gets 2k. So it gets really, really big, but usually you don't give a crap about reversing your opponent or anything like that. You're just looking to get the damage in, stuff like that. Very powerful card. I like it as a one-of. Like I said, most games I do get reverses because this is Japanese format where a lot of combos right now All the good combos right now require reverses and can't move around, and there's not a lot of people who play Attack on Titan, at least in my meta, and also in Japan for the most part. Finally, we get to one of the other corner pieces of this deck. This level 1 Aqua from set, or not level 1, level 3 Aqua from set 1. It has a climax combo that doesn't matter. The first effect it has is in battle, your opponent can't use backups with this card. And then the major effect for this that's most important is when this card comes into play from hand, you can pay 1, and if you do, your opponent picks 2 climaxes in their waiting room and then shuffles everything else in their waiting room back into their deck. So whenever you do this, it just guarantees that there's only 6 climaxes at most in your opponent's deck at any moment there after doing this effect. Usually there are turns where if your opponent kind of trips up on triggering like 1 or 2 climaxes, or they have one in hand because they're waiting to combo off the next turn, you can force a refresh for like 5 or 4, making them very decompressed, making big swings for like 4 or 5. Like we just got done talking about, stick very, very easily. Very spooky card. I currently run it as a 1-of because I run some tech that makes it super easy to find no matter where it's at, except I guess stock technically. But I've had no issues with this. I've seen some lists run 2 because I think this card is a very, very important cornerstone for being able to guarantee kills with your opponent. But as of right now, of like the 20 or so games I've played with this deck, I've never came into a situation where I needed this card to win and I couldn't find it easily. But if you guys find some issues, try bumping this up to 2. I currently have a playset of Aqua Signs in JP, so I mean, at any point I can just bump it up. Finally, this is a tech piece that I think no one is playing, which I think is pretty, I don't want to say important, but I think it's really strong. So I played 2 of set 1 Eris. As you notice, I do not play the early play for this card because I'm not looking to early play this card and try to like go off and kill my opponent at level 2 like the old Goddess deck did in set 1. I guess the Goddess deck in set 2 also kind of does the same thing because this combo is just very powerful, or this effect is very powerful. The reason I play it is because there are some cases where your opponent just, you can't like triple Megumin because your opponent has untargetable characters and stuff like that. Or like you still decompress your opponent, but it's not enough to really push for game with just 3 Megumins sometimes, just because you're either behind or whatnot. This also provides 1 less stock you have to spend, I guess, to go off on Megumin, because you do get the attacks from it and stuff. But the reason we run this card in general is because the first effect is when it does come into play, we can salvage a character from our waiting room. I believe, let's see, yeah, it's an adventure trait or magic trait or mentor trait or goddess trait character, which is everything in our deck. Let me double check. Yeah, everything in our deck has one of those traits, except for obviously the events. But what makes it so powerful is that if I need to get a Megumin out of the waiting room, I can do that. If I need the Aqua level 1 or level 3 from set 1 from the waiting room, I can do that. I can do things such as like grab the level 0 Aqua, force a refresh, and then play my Megumins to find the climax, because in some cases you just like cancel 4 times the turn before, and for whatever reason you didn't have the stock soul in your hand to begin with, because you're looking to cantrip into it most of the time. So if you get unlucky and like cancel 4 times in a row and they're all the stock soul, you can grab this, play it, grab the level 0, force a refresh, and then have a chance of cantripping into it with your level 3 Megumins. Also, this combos very, very well with your 3/2 Megumin that summons things out for free. So you can like play the 3/2 Megumin, and then you're able to play this from your hand for free, and then you get a free salvage basically off of that, which is like I said, really, really powerful. And then also it's in there too for those like I said, like some situations you're just unable to get the stock soul to go off, so you're looking to play like 2 of these and like the level 3 Megumin that burns for 5 after forcing a refresh with Aqua and stuff. Pretty good. And the only reason we actually run 2 is because it's off trait, but since it has the effect that I can salvage a character, it's very, very easy to just get this, like as long as you have 1 in your hand. Usually the other one is in waiting room, or you can force it in waiting room through a lot of milling effects that you do end up having in the deck. Every time I've needed, like I've needed to do like double airs or something, I've always been able to grab it with this effect. But you do have to realize sometimes you're just not going to be able to do that because you only do run 2 copies. But this card has been super amazing. I've won a couple games just by being able to play this card because I made the call that the Burn 4 Clock Kick Mega Man was just not going to get me there without doing some silly stuff. So this lets me, you know, side attack level 1s and stuff like that twice just to force like really good numbers and things like that. Or like if your opponent's really compressed and you weren't able to go off with Aqua, this is another finisher that's really powerful. There is a lot of RNG with how this card works because it does have to reveal the top card of your deck. When the center character attacks, you pay 1, discard 2, reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's basically if it's a character, then you can stand this character. I believe it's let's see. Yeah, if the card's adventure trait or magic or adventure trait or goddess trait character, you can stand this card. So every card in this deck basically has adventurer trait, except for a couple cards which like obviously are the climax or the 2/3 event, but everything that has adventure or goddess trait, so it should stand with everything else. And usually by then you kind of know what kind of risk factor you're going with trying to restand. But yeah, this card, very powerful tech card in my opinion. I'm surprised not more people play it as like a 2 of or so in a deck, but I can understand why since it's off trait with everything else. And then finally, like I said earlier, we played the 4 gates for the level 1 combo and 4 stock soul for the level 1 and level 3 combo. Stock soul is actually a really good card for this deck unintentionally. I think in design, because the level 0 union, every time you play stock soul, even if you don't combo off, you do build 1 stock, which basically translates into pay 1, top check 4, add 1 to hand the following turn, which is very powerful. So games where you're not able to like combo off properly because your opponent like keeps denying you every turn to be able to combo with your level 1, you just start slamming stock souls so you get extra damage in and you get to build an extra stock every turn. Just to be able to dig more and get more cards to your hand and things like that. Those games are kind of rough, but I mean, having stock soul is pretty powerful. Also, you know, gate, whenever you trigger gate, +1 to hand, always really good. Besides that, if you guys have any other questions about this deck or how to play it and stuff, just go ahead and comment below. I'll go ahead and answer everything. I'm going to try to get some games in with this deck before I head out to Japan. And then after that, so you guys can see it in action. And then hopefully before New Year's, you guys will get another deck profile specifically for English Konosuba as of the end of the year of 2018 of what, at least personally, what I think the best version of the deck will be, as well as, you know, good tech cards and things like that. But if they do release like some of these promos that are missing currently in English, I think the deck completely changes easy. Besides that, guys, I hope to see you in the next video. Later.